All right, Clint, we're live, man.
Glad we're live. How's it going?
Good. Yeah, it's going well. Um, it's kind of funny too because like we were thinking about doing this in the afternoon. I know you've got something going on later today. And when I scheduled it to 11:30, what I didn't think about was like actually Fridays at 11:30. That was always the time that I would have to show up for my forecast calls for my tech company. So it's like everybody would gather, we'd have to forecast our numbers, and it wasn't always my favorite meeting of the week. There was always a lot of pressure delivering the numbers, and to actually replace that meeting in this time with actually this live stream on watches is, I think, part of the whole vision coming together right now.
Yeah, dude. That's you'll get used to it. I've been out of that, world for almost 19 months and you know, the pipeline calls, the, you know, end the week having to, end the week push or end the month push, beginning of month push, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it, man. That's it. Cool. So let's just jump into it, man. We're just going to start the conversation, and we'll see kind of where this goes. But I think it's a pretty cool story how you and I got connected. You know, I'd seen your name come up in the comments and name come up in some of the posts that I'd written around watches, and then you reached out to me with this idea to start collaborating on watches, probably like a month ago or something, and we got here. So, like, what was it about, kind of the watches and the content that I was writing that was interesting to you?
Well, I mean, you were putting out the perspective of, somebody that's always been in the watches and cars, like, right? There's, I think a lot of LinkedIn, it's like, oh, if you have a nice car or want to buy a nice watch, it's a bad thing. It's always like the 25-year-old financial advisor, right? Making these posts. And it's like an insecure thing or whatever. And you're dropping the knowledge of like people are really missing the boat, outside of the tax advantages, the the network you can do with it. But then, I mean, I've never lost money on a watch. Like I've worn, a nice watch before for 3 or 4 years and sold it for more than I got out of it. And that same watch got me a relationship because me and Guy connected over the unique watch brand we had that, led to some great opportunities. And I ended up, when I need a place to stay in Nashville, this hotel, because he's like a premier trap, like we ended up staying in this penthouse for free. And it all came down to like, we just connected over watches. And so back to your stuff, I was like, man, this guy gets it. And I feel like a lot of people feel like, I mean, I just made my first post ever about watches because it's like it comes with criticism that, if you like nice things, it comes from an insecure place opposed to like, man,
Yeah.
I'm just enthusiast, and you can make money too, right? Like you can enjoy it and not lose money or make money. And
Yeah.
so that's what appealed to me.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I mean, watches went mainstream around COVID. Everybody was kind of sitting around, had a little extra cash. A lot of guys put that, and a lot of girls put that into watches, and that momentum has really continued since then. I've been into alternative assets really for like 25 years. When I first broke into like my career, I didn't really spend my commissions on stocks and other things and like traditional things a lot of people would be putting money into. It just wasn't that exciting to me to like put money into a stock that I would like watch it up or down on a chart, but I didn't like experience the company necessarily. I wasn't on the inside of the company. And I just didn't get like really any excitement from that type of investing. So that's what attracted me to alternative assets. And it really started with sports memorabilia. So started collecting like Hall of Fame baseball cards and photography. I'd put all that stuff up on my walls. And I remember my wife complaining. She's like, why are you spending all this money on like cards? It's not even making, it's not making us any money. Right. So I ultimately like just kind of like transition. I was like, look, like we can actually make money versus the S&P with these assets. So that all evolved into watches eventually. And like the watches started with exotic cars. A lot of guys on exotic cars are into watches too. And initially, like, you want watches as a status symbol. But I really learned that like watches are a lot more than just a status symbol. And I think that's where I'm really trying to position things from an alternative asset standpoint, and that like you can actually buy watches intelligently. You can use them as business networking tools. And I also just love just, the wearable art on the wrist. I think those are a couple things that, as watches have become more mainstream, that you're seeing a lot more people pay attention to. Okay, it's not just the price tag, it's actually the circles that this watch will get me into. It's also that this is something that I can reliably park money into. It's a hedge against inflation. And those are all just really cool things that I've just been experimenting with in terms of like what I've been writing on LinkedIn, talking to my customers about as well. And this was all while I was, VP of sales 3 times over. I was just finding time at night. I was finding time, on the weekends. I was hiring virtual assistants to like post all my stuff online, because I was, like I said at the beginning of this call, like typically on Friday mornings at 11:30 Eastern time, I'm delivering my forecast of the business, right? And like it's like unbelievable that I'm here talking watches. It's literally a dream come true. And I know, in my post that I made yesterday, just around, kind of getting fired and like the opportunity to kind of pour my passion into something like TimelySoles, like the watch software business that I acquired earlier this week in my trip to Florida. The ability to just like kind of bring all of that together as a full-time gig. Like watches are real, alternative assets are real. You can make money with watches, you can park wealth in watches. And to me, that was always just far more exciting than just like investing in stocks and watching a portfolio go up or down, or have somebody else manage that stock portfolio on your behalf. Cause like I'm sitting here, like I can wear my Hublot Aero Fusion. Like this is a pretty cool watch. It's a skeleton dial. And what's like really interesting about this watch here is that there's actually, it's about $40,000 MSRP watch, but you can purchase these in the secondary market for less than $20,000, right? These watches depreciate, and I think that's one of the biggest mistakes I hear so many people make, is they buy their watches brand new. So like the biggest mistake you could ever make is to buy this Hublot at the Hublot boutique, because they literally depreciate the minute you leave the boutique or authorized dealer. It's not like a car where it's going to take 3 to 5 years to depreciate. It literally depreciates instantly. So like somebody paid $40,000 for this watch, and they took a bath on half of that money literally within minutes after they bought it, right? So you as a smart consumer, you can like make and navigate around these types of decisions in the secondary market. And that's where, I guide a lot of my clients, is making these smart decisions to like put money into these assets to park it reliably. But what's also cool about this watch is that you've got, Hublot's version of what they call King Gold, right? So it's like a rose gold proprietary mix. And like the melt value of this watch alone is $15,000, right? So when you think about like the rise of gold in the market over the past 12 months, these watches are rising in conjunction with that, right? And so that's why they always have like an intrinsic value. That was also really appealing to me. It's like it's a little bit different than like kind of how a lot of people think about cryptocurrency. It's like, is there necessarily like an intrinsic value to cryptocurrency or to Bitcoin? Some would probably argue that it's a store of value or store of wealth, but it still isn't something that's tangible or you can touch or has that intrinsic value. You certainly can't wear it, and that's what I love about watches.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. You might have to send me that one. That thing looked pretty good.
Yeah, it's a fun one, man. It's heavy on the wrist.
Yeah, it looks like that. So that the melt value on that, that's pretty crazy. So it's like it's not going to go to zero, as far as the value.
Right. Yeah.
It's going to be there. And
Exactly.
and so, and then if you have, and you were telling me this, so there's all the things we're talking about, but then also if you own a business like I do, right, and I have a CPA, we maximize all write-offs, and right, I'm probably going to go buy an SUV before the end of the year. But from what you're telling me, you can also, like you can with cars, do some depreciation with watches, or write them off, or a portion of them off.
Yeah, exactly. So like basically you've got this idea where from a luxury watch standpoint, you've got these alternative assets. And this is like kind of the biggest thing that a lot of business owners miss from a write-off standpoint is that you can actually buy a watch and you can use it in your social media, you can use it in your marketing. And when you do that, it can become a write-off for you. So like the most basic example that I can share here is like you own a car dealership and you buy a watch and you take a photo of that watch with some of your inventory in the background. You post that on some of your marketing, you post it on your website, you post it on your social media. And as soon as you do that, it becomes a part of your business. It becomes associated with your business. So then you can use that as a write-off. And the one trick is that you can't write it off entirely in that first year, but you can write it off over the course of a 5-year period. So, but so it's not going to make a huge difference to some business owners, around like whatever the write-off amount is for their watch. But it just becomes like another reason why luxury watches are like a smart play. They're an investment that you can make into your business, and it's something that you can enjoy and actually not only make money with, but save money with as well. And it's a really simple tax trick.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, and also I think, right, some guys just want to justify, dropping 20, 30 grand on the watch. And so, right, if it's, you could tell your wife it's a write-off as well. It's like, hey, I'm wearing my wrist. It's a networking tool and it's a write-off. I mean,
Yeah.
it's smart.
It is. Yeah. It definitely is. So, yeah, I mean, you, as a business owner, you're looking to always minimize your tax burden. I think even for like consumers, like we're all just way overtaxed. And you hear these stories all the time about, business owners and billionaires in particular, like paying very little tax. It's just like there's so many different ways that you can lower your tax burden, and this is just one small way that you can actually kind of move into that. That makes a pretty significant difference.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. So, like, I know there's a lot of, like, somebody like myself, loves watches, but also doesn't like to lose money. And so if someone, and then everyone plays the game, you have the brands, you have the different price points. And so, right, if somebody's watching this and they're like, hey, I think I might, go for my first, kind of, I don't know if you want to say entry level or about that 10 grand price point, take or give, or even what would you recommend? Because I've seen where there's almost like, right, there's buying to hold forever. You don't care if you lose money. And then there's like, hey, I want to be able to get in and out of something. What's like the minimum price point you kind of got to be at to get some watches where you can play at that level? And then kind of from there, do you have brands or a few you would recommend?
Yeah, good question, man. The entry point into luxury watches isn't as high as a lot of people think. I mean, like you've got brands like Breitling. So I have here out of our inventory, I've got a Breitling Navitimer. This is one of the best starter watches out there. And this is actually the watch that got me into watches itself. I saw a guy wearing a Breitling Navitimer, and just, the details on the dial are pretty amazing. And don't ask me necessarily to even describe what each of the notes on the dial even means. For me, it's more like the artistic appeal of the watch. But like a watch like that retails for somewhere like around like $10,000 to $12,000, and but on the secondary market, they're available for about half of that. And so when you think about the ability to take something that was about a $10,000 to $12,000 MSRP, pick it up in the secondary market at about half of that value, and knowing that that value is really never going to fluctuate up or down for the most part over the course of time, because you've kind of bought it at that like flattened out depreciation curve. It just makes a lot of sense, right? And that's a model that a lot of my clients will kind of purchase and get into initially. Cartier is also another great example. So I've got like a Cartier Calibre de Cartier right here. This is a really popular watch with a lot of guys, especially if they're kind of looking for something that's a little bit more dressy. And it also carries like the Cartier brand, which is known primarily for like women's jewelry, but they actually do a really good job with watches. And Cartier is actually the second most popular watch brand by revenue, which a lot of people probably didn't even know. But a watch like this, you can get this for under $5,000, but it's got an MSRP of almost $10,000, similar to the Breitling Navitimer. So you can really get started with these watches at a relatively low price point. And when you move in at that price point, it's a really good store of value, right? So you're not going to be losing money on an investment like that. And again, like a watch like that can be treated as a tax write-off. And then you've also got some bigger watches that you can look at. So like I have this Blancpain as well. So this is one of my favorite watches. I love Blancpain primarily just because it's an enthusiast brand. Like when I see guys wearing Blancpain, like I know that they're real connoisseurs around watches. This one has a date function, a month function. It also has a moon phase function as well. So a lot of complications on this one, which I think is pretty neat for someone that's interested in that type of watch on their wrist. It's also a really cool green color as well. So like a watch like that, the retail on it is about like $27,000. But you can also pick those up for about 60 to 70% of the MSRP. Those watches hold their value a little bit better in the secondary market from that depreciation point versus like a Cartier or a Breitling Navitimer. So those are all kind of few quick options that I see a lot of my clients kind of moving into.
Yeah, man, that Navitimer, I do nod over that watch many years ago. I never pulled the trigger, but I did end up with a Cartier Roadster.
Yeah.
And that was a really cool watch. I got a really good deal on it, and very unique watch. And that's the one this really wealthy guy I had got connected with doing a little business. He had money to have like whatever watch you want. He was a hardcore Cartier guy, and he was like, thought it was so cool that and I think what some people, it wasn't even about the dollar amount of the watch or whether, because that wasn't a crazy expensive watch, or at least what I got it for. But that week we, connected over that. That was very like eye-opening for me. But I will tell you this, what's funny too is it was a unique looking watch, but it's one of those like not many people know, but those who do know, like you end up in like an hour-long conversation. So it was pretty cool. And I think that watch, I paid less than $5,000. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great example, right? Because so I was actually at like a business conference probably like 3 years ago, and I always would wear a cool pair of sneakers and I would wear a cool watch anytime I travel for business. I've actually I've worn like Jordan 1s to like very exclusive like 3 Michelin star restaurants in New York City, just because like that's how I kind of like to show up for business. But I've always got a nice watch to pair with it. And so a few years ago, I was at this conference in Austin, Texas, and I was working the trade show floor. And a lot of people, when they're working the trade show floor, they'll look at the business names on the trade show booths. They'll look at like the faces of the people at the booths. Like I actually kind of look at the shoes and I look at the watch, and then I kind of go from there. And so I was walking around and I saw this guy wearing a Hublot. And I was at Hublot Big Bang, and I was like, okay, this is someone that's going to be pretty interesting to talk to. Like, let me just go up and compliment him on his watch and show him my watch, and let's see what happens, right? So I approached him, and complimented on the Hublot. And I was wearing an Omega Speedmaster, actually like a moon phase, like a blue ceramic, and showed him my watch. So we started talking about watches for about 5 minutes, and he ended up being kind of a big collector. And then we kind of transitioned. It was like, oh, well, what do you do? Well, he was actually the president of that company. And they were a really big tech company that like did some partnerships with 6sense. And this guy that I met has actually been nominated for like Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year a couple times. And I just approached him and had a conversation with him about his watch. He's gone on and he's been a multiple time over client of mine. And I've also, at the time, had introduced him to my business, the tech company I was working for, where they pitched us on selling their services because we were actually buying 6sense at the time, and they kind of did some optimization around the tech, right? So again, like I just like show up with my personality on my wrist, with my personality on my feet, wherever I go for business, and it's opened up these type of connections. It wasn't on that trip, but it was a trip earlier that year where I was wearing a watch and I was wearing a pair of sneakers, and I walked into the Hertz dealership and started talking to the guy. He noticed my shoes as I was kind of like walking up to the counter. He complimented me on my shoes, and then we started talking about shoes and watches, and then he gave me a free upgrade on my car. I didn't ask for it; he just did it. He just gave me the free upgrade because we connected over the shoes and the watch thing, right? So, like those types of things are, I think, what people miss around like a watch is that it's more than the price tag. It's even like more than the status that it gives you, even though there was kind of like a status example that is shared. But it opens up conversations. It's like an icebreaker, and that's what has been a huge benefit to me. And one of the most exciting things to me, like kind of taking this on from a business standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I've had so I've even had it with some lower, like much lower price point watches. One, I have a really interesting story about. This is a tag I have that's not too crazy expensive. But then one watch, so I have this $250 Timex, but like the Red Wing boot company did a collab with them, so it was like it's like a tan leather band, and it was like this really big face. It's just a really good looking watch, and I paired it with like the belt and the shoes that matched the band. And when I used to have to dress nicer and had a normal job, the amount of people that like literally grabbed my wrist, and it was the group I was in, was like, it was typically successful guys, and they're expecting it's going to be, something crazy. It was a really sharp looking watch. I still have it. Like, what is that? What is that? I'm like, Timex, bro. And it wasn't even about the dollar amount, but like I paired it so well with everything, and it was just like it wasn't run of the mill Timex. It was that I didn't even plan on buying it, right? I don't know if I saw an ad and saw it, and I was like, oh, that thing looks awesome. So I think back to the status stuff is like, yeah, I mean, there's when I bought the Cartier right after a good year, and that was kind of as a guy who looked at DuPont Registry magazine, because there wasn't the internet when I was in middle school.
90s, man. I love that.
And yeah, I mean, we would look at all day, every day, and look at all the watches. But that Cartier was pretty cool. So and that was a little more like I understand the status component, or right, if you've looked at this stuff your whole life and you get it. But I've had just as many interesting conversations off something that's not really that expensive. It's just kind of unique.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very cool. I think something else that I do want to hit on is like there's definitely the business networking aspect of these watches, but there's also another thing that I love about watches, which is that they're really wearable art. And one of my favorite brands that is doing this wearable art thing is Zenith. And I've actually got a couple examples of their watches here. Check this one out, right? So like this is the Zenith El Primero Chroma 2. And this watch is pretty cool because it's got a 1/100th chronograph on it. So if I kind of click the top button here, you'll see you've got like the 1 second counter on the chronograph. And then, but what's really cool is that you just have like the colors across the dial, and then you've also got the colors on the back of the dial as well, like full skeleton, both front and back. And I actually have the sister to this Chroma 2 right next to me here as well, which is in white. So you've got the same type of style, the Chroma 2 Zenith El Primero, same 1/100th second on the chronograph. And just a really, really fun watch. I wore this in Miami back in October, and it fit perfectly, like the personality of Miami. And this is, in my opinion, one of the coolest examples of like kind of the wearable art phase. And you've seen a lot of brands like kind of Patek and Rolex over the past few years even start to experiment with more like gemstones in their bezels and their dials, which is something that they never did before. And that's a direct response to kind of the consumer interest and demand in a little bit more of like an artistic look on the wrist with these watches. But brands like Zenith and Ulysse Nardin, Hublot as well are a few great examples of these brands are actually doing some really interesting things with watches as wearable art. So like in what I love about like I think Zenith in particular and Ulysse Nardin is that you really have this kind of three things going for a watch like that. You've got the watch is wearable art on your wrist, right? So it's like an expression of your personality. And then you have the fact that the watch, when you purchase it correctly, is an asset on your wrist, right? So it's a reliable store of wealth. And then it's a business networking tool. I mean, I went to lunch with some of my clients and some of my peers kind of in the watch space. And, in wearing that watch, it was like everybody noticed it. Everybody wanted to see it. There were questions about it. So it's a great business networking tool, right? And so I think it's a great example of like kind of the three things that I look for. And like whenever I'm recommending like a watch, like those are brands that I like to turn people onto because in the watch world, you got a lot of people that only think Rolex, but when you start to kind of broaden the horizons around that, it is like a bigger world out there than Rolex, and like there's some additional things you can think about in these watches, like business networking, like wearable art. That I think gets a lot of people interested and excited beyond just like the status or the fact that it's a Rolex. And that's one of my favorite things that I like to do in kind of conversations with folks that are newer to watches or maybe just Rolex guys.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I'd imagine. I guess be curious what you see of people who are kind of getting their like first watch that are kind of getting to that higher price point. Do you see many of them kind of often wanting Rolex? Although more people are knowing about, what's funny is like because yeah, everything got popular in 2022, but like I've been into this long before that, and it's funny to see some of the brands like the APs and stuff. It seems like a lot of, especially younger guys, are kind of going after those. But like, do you see when people first? I have a good question for you. So compared to the guys in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s that come to you, what's the difference in what these guys are looking for? Like what brands, all that.
Yeah. I mean, look, the common denominator across all those age categories is Rolex, right? They all are interested in Rolex. And I was having a conversation with a guy that's actually like 23, business owner, and business is just printing money right now. And we were having this conversation yesterday. And he bought a Cartier from me in October, Cartier Santos. Beautiful watch, and he wanted his next watch to be a Rolex, which I think makes a lot of sense, right? Like he wanted a Rolex Sky Dweller, and so we were talking about getting him into the Rolex Sky Dweller, but then we were also thinking about like how does the collection continue to evolve from here? Because he asked me a question. He's like, "Hey, Eric, is this going to become an addiction for me?" I'm like, "Yeah, it is." It's going to become an addiction for you. And this is not going to be the last one. There's going to be more from here. So like, let's start to think about like what that trajectory looks like. So we started talking about like Audemars Piguet. We started talking about like more options to think about like the business networking, the wearable art aspects across these watches. And, I've had, this is a super busy time for me with the holidays. Probably 70% of the people that I have just general inquiries from are asking about Rolex. And this is, all age categories. And the reality is like, that makes a lot of sense because Rolex is by far the biggest in the industry. It has the biggest name brand. That's where generally everybody starts when they've got some capital to park into something like this. What a lot of folks don't necessarily understand though is that they want to get the watch for retail with Rolex, but that's actually extremely difficult to do, right? So you think about the Rolex Daytona, you think about the Rolex Skydweller, the Blue Dial in particular. You think about the Yachtmaster, you think about the Presidentials. You can't just walk into Rolex boutique and buy those. It just doesn't work that way. The way that you actually get those watches is you're offering some type of quid pro quo to the Rolex boutique or the Patek boutique or the AP boutique, right? And where I've seen guys have success with this is one guy that's like a business owner in Massachusetts. He owns a chain of several restaurants. He gets all the watches that he asked for from his AD. You know why? Because he's actually catering the Rolex boutique once a month on Fridays. He sends them food from his restaurants and they're taken care of. And so when he walks in there, he takes care of them. They take care of him, right? And then another example is I know a guy that manages a boutique with Hermes. And when he walks into the Rolex boutique, they understand kind of where he's coming from. And they are happy to open up the catalog and the inventory to him and make those pieces available because in return, when they go to their Hermes boutique, they're treated the same way, right? And that's how most of these guys get these watches. Because the demand is so high, you've got to do something unique and different to stand out. And so everybody else is like fighting for scraps. So you have to kind of like help people realize that just how unattainable some of these watches are. And that's just kind of by design. The supply is always going to be low. But what's also important to realize is that even when you're paying like the aftermarket values on these watches, where you've already got that price appreciation in the secondary market, you're actually buying still at like a reliable dollar because the demand is so high on these pieces, the intrinsic value of these pieces is so high that if you're buying like a Rolex Daytona for $30,000, which is almost 2x the MSRP, that number is actually really not going to go down. Rolex has had a couple MSRP price increases this year, which has pushed up prices in the secondary market too. And so I think kind of helping people understand and see that trajectory of these pieces over time that do appreciate once they leave the boutique, which is pretty rare. Only 8% of the Rolex portfolio, for example, is actually you can actually buy. Or actually appreciates when you leave the boutique. 90% plus of Rolexes, when you buy them, they're going to be losers on the secondary market, right? And typically a lot of the guys are forced to buy those pieces before they're even in consideration to buy something that's actually worth buying. So there's there's a lot of like, I think kind of education for some of these guys that are coming into the Rolex market because that is what everybody wants first, but they also want it at the retail price. And then if they really wanted the retail price, you kind of send them on their way and then they'll come back because they just realize it's just not something that is realistic for them to be able to get at that point in time.
Yeah. It'd be great to have that connect for sure.
Well, yeah, of course it would be. Everybody wants it. Everybody comes to me and they're like, yeah, I want a Daytona. I want a Skydweller. I want a Day-Date. Well, yeah, so does everybody else. They all want it for retail. Right. But that's just like, it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. And it's not even something necessarily that keeps like someone like myself in business, because it's not like a huge amount of the volume that I'm making available. Like everything that I'm stocking is primarily what I call like value-based watches. Like these are the ones that depreciate after you buy them. And so what I'm offering is like actually a discount to MSRP and then a reliable store of wealth once you put it on your wrist.
Gotcha. Yeah, and to your point, I remember looking at like, the Rolex, the GMT, the Batman years ago, back when I got that Cartier, like I think on the secondary market, I don't remember what the retail, I think they were going for like, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, this was quite a while ago, but I think maybe 8 grand. And that was on secondary. And there's even like an AP I was looking at back then. And then like now today, like even if you bought that on the secondary market above retail, if anyone could buy it at that price, they'd buy every single one they could, I mean, they go for what, roughly double that now?
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Just curious, as you've gone through, I'm sure, every phase yourself and every brand, what actually, since we're talking about Rolex, do you actually have any Rolex in your personal collection that you plan on keeping?
No, actually, I'm not a fan of Rolex because I think it's kind of what everybody else has, and it's what everybody else wants because it's the crown. And to me, that's not like really exciting. I actually don't. When I'm networking, I don't love to meet other guys that have Rolexes. I would much prefer to network with the guy that's wearing like a Planet Ocean Omega, or that's wearing like a 50 Fathoms Blancpain, or a Maxi Marine Ulysse Nardin, or an El Primero Zenith. Because then, like, first of all these guys have incredible stories. If you ever find yourself in some type of business event and you see somebody with those types of watches, like, you just got to go up and meet them, understand where they're coming from and why they bought that watch, and what their plans are for the future. Because there's going to be something really interesting there. I guarantee it. It's going to be something that you learn and that you're going to want to share with your friends because it was such a cool story. Like that's just the type of guys that wear these type of watches. I intentionally like don't like networking and encourage people never to buy like a Rolex Submariner, because that's what everybody wants. It's the entry level Rolex, and there's nothing exciting about it, in my opinion. And it's like the watch that people wear that don't really understand watches. I'm not into the brand personally. I love wearing stuff that is kind of represents kind of what I think and what I talk about when it comes to watches, which is like, this Hublot that I'm wearing right now, right? So like, exciting dial. It's a great value story. We're able to park the money on your wrist. It's got gold in it, which gives you, kind of that intrinsic value and the appreciation of following the gold markets. And, the dial and the design is beautiful, right? So it's like wearable art. And like I said, like that guy that I met at the trade show a couple of years ago, he was wearing a Hublot. And that's where our whole relationship started, just because I noticed that on his wrist. And so it's got that business networking aspect to it as well, where it literally just kind of helps you work the room when you know how to use it correctly.
Yeah. Now, I wonder, depending on what room you're working, right, I guess it depends on, because I'd say in some rooms, I know where it's like, if you have a Rolex, there's probably not many people wearing a Rolex. And yeah, so I guess I can see the perspective of, I even have like I've shown you like my brother's friends collection, those insane ones I sent you, like those heavy pieces as you described them. But he wants the no date sub because he sources Porsches, and like vintage ones for people, does marketing over that dealer. And he's like he's kind of like me, where he doesn't like he wants something like kind of quiet and nice and subtle, and not a look at me, but also like respected, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like his personality is probably not to wear even something you would wear or I would wear. That's like even that one you're wearing now that like I think is amazing is probably like too much attention for him.
Mhm.
I see the perspective of, I mean, I think it is a classic look. I think to your point, like it's, not like a standout kind of unique or look at me watch, but I think, I've seen some guys with them and I think it's like your standard sub. I mean, I think it's a clean, you know, it's a clean kind of understated look. So,
Mhm.
but I definitely get your perspective, but I also see like why my brother likes the no date.
Mhm. Mhm.
And somebody a watch that kind of can do it all too, it kind of
Right.
t-shirt dressed up.
Yep,
Um,
for sure. Hey, I want to take this question that Kevin threw into the chat here, right? And I think it's pretty relevant based on what we're talking about. Yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of resources to check out, when it comes to like new brands. I mean, like my website is a good place to start. Like for example, I'll actually um, kind of point up here. Like I've got my website up on the screen. Um, I actually have a buying guide on my website that anybody can go check out. And it's basically just like kind of a flip book that covers 50 of my favorite luxury watch brands or luxury watch models. I go through like a rating of each of them. I go through kind of like my perspective on them as well. And you can just kind of flip through it, right? Just like any book. So like I kind of go over, hey, here are the car watches, diver watches, pilot watches, watches for networking, watches as art, and then watches for global travelers. And I'll flip through. You can kind of see like generally the design of what it looks like. So like I've got the Rolex. I start with the Rolex Daytona, but then I go into the Tag Monaco Golf, which is I think one of my favorite watches. That's very very reasonably priced. But yeah, you can just kind of flip through this buying guide here. It's a great place to get exposure to some watches that I think are really cool. I don't like ignore Rolex by any means because it's like there's always going to be a demand there, and I give you like my perspective on it. I do rate the Submariner as like a 1 star from like my personal opinion, and I've got like 4 stars on the Daytona because it like the Daytona is a cool watch and it has a lot of history to it, but so do these other watches. Like a lot of these watches have like really incredible history. I think like probably one of my favorite watches from a historical standpoint is the Omega Speedmaster. Right, this is the moon watch, um, considered by many to be like one of the most important watches that's ever been created. Right, so like it's called the moon watch because it was literally used by astronauts on the first missions to the moon. So Omega went through a process with NASA where they had to prove that the quality of their watch would be suitable for space travel and would be suitable for the lunar landing because NASA wanted some type of like mechanical timekeeping instrument that wasn't tied to the mission itself, but were literally on the wrist of the astronauts themselves. And this is the watch that they wore. And I think just like the connection to space travel, the connection to adventure, is something that makes this watch really unique in the Omega brand. And it's something that you see with a lot of other watches as well. Like, so we just got this one into inventory yesterday. This is actually, you may be able to see it a little bit on kind of the reflection, like the 007 on the dial. This is the Omega James Bond 50th anniversary Seamaster. So it's actually like a smaller dial size. I think it's like a 37 millimeter. So it's the smallest of like all the James Bond watches out of the Omega line. But it represents the 50th anniversary. And Omega has like this exclusive deal with the James Bond franchise where with every movie that comes out, they create a watch for James Bond to wear in the movie. And the guys that star in the movie as James Bond actually have like a pretty significant role in actually designing the watch itself. So the James Bond model watches are some of my favorite. They are very popular across my customer base, and anytime that I can get my hands on one, at the right dollar, I'll always buy it because I think they're just like a really interesting story, and also just create this energy for the guy that's wearing them. That's like, this is the James Bond watch, and this is really cool. And some of and I think really some of the designs that Omega does with James Bond and that model are very attractive, very colorful, very sleek, and unique across the Omega lineup. That creates a lot of popularity as well. Like the Omega Spectre is actually my favorite of the James Bond watches because it's blue. I love blue, and the dial on it is just, the pattern is incredible. It's like a blue and yellow combination. Yeah, and I think there's so many other watches that you can think about from just like a legacy standpoint. I think Panerai is one that not a lot of guys are familiar with, like the Panerai brand, but Panerai is like one of my favorites. This is an all ceramic watch, and it's also a GMT with a 72-hour power reserve. And this is a very classic watch that a lot of my clients that aren't like that familiar with Panerai, I love turning them onto the brand because it's very interesting. They have very unique designs. So Panerai actually started as a brand by creating timekeeping instruments for the Italian Navy. So it started as like a dive brand, and evolved out of that into a Swiss manufactured timepiece with roots in Italy that continue today. And some of the original Panerai models out of the Luminor brand in the early 2000s are considered like some of the most sought after collector pieces out there across different Swiss pieces.
Yeah, those are such good looking watches, especially with the different bands, like from the nice leather to. I remember they had like a recent one was like the white face with the green rubber band.
Mm-hmm.
Like, man, that's like the perfect summer watch.
Yeah, it is. Perfect summer watch is this one right here, man. That I was in Miami with this one in October, and I felt perfectly in my element with this. But yeah, like the all white ceramic, the colors. That is my favorite summer watch right there.
Yeah, that thing looks pretty cool.
It is cool. Yeah, for sure. And then anybody else that's like kind of checking out the live broadcast right now. So I've got my website up on the screen here. You can kind of check out any of the watches that I'm talking about here just by going to TimelySoles.com. And then you've got my new arrivals. In the new arrivals section, you can see all of the watches that I generally have available. There's a few that are coming in every day, and we don't quite have them all up at the same time or at that time, but you can generally kind of come up here and you can see each of the pieces that we've been talking about. So like here's the Blanc Pawn that we talked about a little bit earlier, the vintage Navitimer that we talked about earlier as well. And I've got a few pages of different watches. I saw somebody, I think it was Matthew in the chat, shouted out the IWC Pilot Top Gun. That one is in our new arrivals section here as well. Here's the Omega that we just talked about, and the Panerai as well on the left of the screen. So you can definitely kind of check out all my new arrivals on the website anytime, and you can ping me either directly through the website, or you can message me on LinkedIn if there's something that you want to get a little bit more details and information on. One more watch I do want to show that's like pretty cool is Jaeger LeCoultre. So Jaeger LeCoultre is also a Swiss brand. This is very much of like a gentleman's wristwatch for business and like very formal attire, obviously. This is also 18 karat gold. But what's really unique about this watch is that it obviously has like a very slim profile, but it also is called the Reverso. And why it's called a Reverso is you can actually take the dial and you can flip it into a bracelet. So if we kind of click it out there, and then we move it back in place, and then you just put it on your wrist here, and you've got a bracelet with the gold showing, and you'll see that the dial is hidden underneath, and then you can just flip it back out whenever you want and flip into the dial. So this is a pretty cool. This is one of the more popular features across the JLC portfolio. Very popular with women. Women's watches too. So the reverse is very popular there, very popular with men with this one as well. Actually I have this one in on consignment. It's also up on the new arrivals page on the website. But this one's in on consignment from a client that is looking to move it before the holidays.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, man. One more watch I do want to show. Like we talked a little bit about Zenith here. Really one of the first watches that I got turned on to from a Zenith standpoint is this one. So this is considered like the open heartbeat dial on the Zenith El Primero. And what I love about this watch is that you actually, on the dial itself, you're able to see like the spinning movement and enjoy that as you're looking down and finding the time. It's also has a skeleton case back, so you can see the movement back there as well as the disc that is the self-winding motion on the watch as well. So this is a watch that I've sold a lot of these just because of how beautiful it is just to watch the movement. You kind of see it in the video there on your wrist. These come in all sorts of colors. There's a lot of different features that you can even get on the dials. This is just kind of a very basic silver dial one. I've done a lot of business with the black dials out of these open heartbeat Zeniths, but this is actually the dial design that turned me on to Zenith in the first place. And then, from there started to evolve into some of the more and some of the larger pieces that I shared earlier. That are, I think considered, true like wearable art, like the El Primero full skeleton dial that I've shared here.
The skeleton dials are so unique.
They are, yeah. I love them. I love all the skeleton dials for sure. It's fun. So, what else, man? What else can we talk about here? So I know that it's been about 30 days since I left my day job. And as I mentioned, like, I think one of the I could have never imagined 30 days ago that at this time where I am typically forecasting my business, instead I'm hosting a LinkedIn Live talking about like my passion, TimelySoles and watches. Like talk about just like a change of emotions, like walking into a forecasting meeting, delivering your numbers, being put on the hot seat to defend your numbers, with your CRO, et cetera, to here just like hanging out on LinkedIn Live and talking watches. I mean, like this is exactly where I had intended like my passions to go. But I just didn't, never imagined that it would actually transpire and look like this at this point in time. So it's like I'm still pinching myself, man. Just like the emotions are pretty cool.
Yeah, it's got to get settled into the new normal. It's amazing. My wife's going through it too. As she just she's working out her last next week will be her last week, and she's done with the corporate world as well.
How long have you been doing your own thing, Clint?
Let's see. I left Zoom Info May of last year, so I think maybe May of last year. So
okay.
Yeah. So not quite. This calendar year would be my first full calendar year out on my own. And once you get out on your own, you kind of was doing one thing and started another business, and then you start chasing everything, and then had to rein it all back into where we're at now. And income is a little bit more consistent and steady, and I'll tell you this, the biggest win for me, granted, this will be the most money I've ever made in a single year from, you know, any tech job I've ever had. But
Mm-hmm.
the bigger value was just having control of my time and calendar, like doing whatever I want, whenever I want. And I don't have to think of, and I had jobs with some flex, my last job didn't, but some with flexibility. But even that back in the mind, like even subconsciously, you know, like, right, are you going to get pinged by a manager, or there's times I reported to the CEO or whatever, like, and you have to justify my position or explain why am I golfing with my daughters in the middle of the day or at the playground, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's been the bigger unlock for me, man. I thought I'd do it because I was like, I want to, don't want somebody telling me what to do, and I can make way more money on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Those things turned out to be true, but that was like I was kind of had a blind spot. The bigger win is I wake up when I want to wake up. I do what I want to do,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and like that's more valuable than money to me.
It is, yeah. How do you? I'm wrestling with this emotion right now, which is like, how do you manage that emotion that there's always more work to be done in the business, and knowing when to like stop and focus on the family and the other stuff? Like, you don't have like the fear, or not necessarily the fear, the anxiety of being called by a manager, or being, brought in last minute to a critical deal. Like, that is no longer present. But you have this emotion and feeling where it's like, all right, the business still needs work, and I need to dive into it. And there's a trade-off that you've always got to be thinking about. Like, how have you navigated that?
Yeah. Well, so I didn't in the beginning, and I went from working a ton to like always working. Like the last half of last year, this time last year, um, I basically like worked myself to death and just like kind of just like,
Mm.
you know, I was already running on fumes and kind of that like, right, because you're taught like, oh, and if you want to be an entrepreneur, like you got to hustle and grind and do all this crap.
Mhm.
And I kind of just like almost pulled the plug on just like I pulled the plug on some businesses, and I just like pumped the brakes, and I realized, okay, I'm not spending time with my kids or my wife. And then um and so this year, beginning of the year, honestly, it's funny, I'll say I make more I've ever made this year. There was many months I didn't really make anything because I wasn't even actively working.
Mm.
I was working on myself, not working on my business, and getting better aligned with, my faith, and kind of dealing with some demons from my past,
Mm.
and trauma and things like that. And so I'm at a place now where, I'm very strong in my faith, and trust in God's plan. And so I've just had so
Yeah.
many things. I'm doing the least amount of grinding I've ever done, working the least amount of hours I've ever worked,
Mm-hmm.
making substantially more, like not even I'm making a little, like it's not even like on the same ballpark financially for me.
Yeah.
And so I'm just at peace where, because here's the truth, like we do have days or weeks or periods where like my wife knows, like, she's like, you're in the zone, you got like, and I like, right. Like I found like there's times where it's going to be urgent. You're going to have to like work a lot and work all day. But what I've gotten really good at is like when there's not those times, you don't need to manufacture. Like you don't need to like manufacture or feel the need to be busy, because what I found is like when I'm recharging myself and spending my time with my wife and kids, like that charges me up. So then
Yeah.
I perform that much better in my business. So so I'm at a place now, like, right, it's kind of goes in waves,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I've got it dialed in where like if I like, even I have a business partner now too, that helped. Like he kind of acquired my business for 50-50, and we
Mm-hmm.
balance each other out. And he doesn't want to work more than 35 hours a week. He's really 30 because he's got 4 kids. And just when we do, we're like really effective. And then we're also like, I think too, my confidence now, like truthfully, if he texts me, he's like, hey, we need to like go make 30 grand in the next week. Like, eh, like, okay, I'll tell my wife, like, hey, I'm gonna go in grind mode for a few days. And truthfully, we'd probably do it in 2 or 3 days. And
Mm-hmm.
then, so I guess I'm just really confident in my ability. Now that I've gotten focused, right? I started chasing too many things, but now that I'm dialed in, I'm just extremely confident, in my ability to to create money if needed, you know.
That's sick, dude.
Yeah, so it's just like I'm not going back. I'll put it this way: like there were periods, right? I did start looking at jobs. I did start having conversations, and you know, sometimes that guaranteed 250 grand. That's really the curse, right? Because that's just enough money where it's like, especially if you live in an area that doesn't have a high cost of living, where it's like, man, it's hard to say no, but they got you by the balls. And then when you kind of get out in your own business, you realize that's not a lot of money at all. Because
Right.
they're only giving you a small percentage of what you're creating for them. And when you go do it yourself, and when I talk about my partner, there's sometimes we have weeks we get paid 4 times. There's no waiting a month or a quarter or whatever for the shit. When we make money on it, like we make that instantly. But I'm at a point now where I'm like, I hit it at like March of this year where I was like burning the bridges to where it's like going back to a W-2 is not, I don't care if they offer me well, there's no one flat out that would offer me what I'm making now, right? Like, because they would want to own probably own me for that.
Yes.
And
yeah.
so I think when it's, just burned down, I'm not going back. Once I committed, not going back, but then also the value in slowing down. Like I had, and I say it wasn't easy, right? I'm sitting there like telling myself, you're not a piece of, you're not a piece of crap. Like this is what your body needs. You gotta listen to your body. You need to like pump the brakes, and then you're gonna, and so, and I'm just now probably back at fully 100%. Like next year, like we're doing pretty good, and we're kind of like not going hard, but next year we have some pretty aggressive goals. I mean, I got a lot of watches I want to buy, man. So I got to hit some pretty big numbers.
I love it. I love it. That's it, man. Reward yourself. Yeah, I mean, like I'm having so many conversations right now. Yeah, it's about the holidays, but it's also about people rewarding themselves for milestones and achievements. And watches are personal, they're emotional, and like that connection to milestones and achievements in business in particular is a huge driver for people moving into these. One last comment that I just kind of thought about is as I've moved into ownership and as I've hired a team to help me grow this business is while I was working the W-2 and either myself or the team was running sales and getting deals done, like we would make, 5, 10, 15, 20% of every deal that we closed. Maybe if you're in like Uber accelerators, you're getting 30%, maybe more. I don't know. But what I realized now as a business owner, when my team closes deals, I'm making 80% of that money. And it's like, dude, how did I not think about this any sooner? Like hire salespeople, teach them the process. And as the business owner, you're making 80% of every deal that they close and they're making 20% and they're happy with that. And I was happy with that in the W-2. I was like, that's cool. But dude, 80% is a lot bigger than 20%.
Yeah, it's you realize if you're willing to give up the secure check, if you have a skill set or knowledge or expertise, and right, if you have a platform, like right, you put out content on LinkedIn, you have true knowledge and expertise on this, like, and let's just say right, tech, I mean, obviously tech, you have the people who you have the big years, whatever, but just on average, right, you can make it pretty much guaranteed 250, 20 grand a month, but also, right, when you own your own business and you have a savage CPA, right, I'm also in real estate, so it's like you make more, and also I pretty much not going to pay any taxes legally. Yeah. So then you get the 85%, and it's taxed less than the 20% you were getting as a W-2.
Totally.
Yeah. So it's
I love
quickly
it,
realize. Yeah.
The thing I remember from like the Robert Kiyosaki books is like pay yourself first, and like with business ownership that you're able to do that. So yeah, it's exciting, man. Let's I know we're a little bit over time here, but this has been a lot of fun. Just talking watches, talking like my journey from W-2 to business ownership, your journey from W-2 to business ownership. We didn't even get into the fact that like you're a girl dad and I'm a girl dad. Like, that's a whole nother episode on that, man. I'm in the middle of the battle right now with a 10-year-old and 13-year-old. So, I mean, it's intense. It's intense. Yeah. But anyways, we talk watches. Anybody that's still hanging on, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. We're going to do this again. Like, this was fun. It was simple. And, check out TimelySoles. This is something that's been a passion of mine. Like, I've been grinding nights, I've been grinding weekends. I've hired virtual assistants to like work on my behalf during the day. I've hired local kids here in my hometown to help me run this business, do my shipments, do my intake. And now that I'm full time on this thing, like it's full on, man. And I'm really excited about it. And thank you so much to the community for the support. Check out TimelySoles. We had the big acquisition this week too. There's going to be more on that coming up in January that I'm looking forward to announcing. And we'll see you guys again on LinkedIn Live. And happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas to everybody. And we'll see y'all soon. Peace.
See ya.